Salutations, ladies and gentlemen. The Knife Raven here, back again with another video. And in today's video, well, this will be the not really long-awaited sequel to yesterday's video. And, well, today I'll be taking a look at a knife that very much goes against what I usually buy and review, but you know, a little bit of change to spice up the sometimes mild boringness of life. And as you can see by this little presentation here, you can already probably tell what this is. It's a steel will knife, and that knife is the Plague Doctor. And this knife is very interesting. It's something that I've been eyeing for at least a year or two, and I never pulled the trigger on it because I never saw a use for it. And I still really don't, to be perfectly honest with you. And this is going to be an odd review for me because the knife in question goes against every single principle of knife buying I pretty much have ever had. And, well, why? I will explain later, but firstly, I'll quickly have a look at the box. It's a nice steel will knives box with this almost hellfire pattern on it, which is quite nice. Steel Will Tactical has their website, their logo, and this is the F16M Plague Doctor, F16M-09, blade D2 BSW, which I believe is like a blackout satin wash or something. Handle is G10, and the spacer is also G10. I went with the all-black model because I think that it suits the Plague Doctor aesthetic a bit better. Inside the box, you get some bubble wrap to keep the knife from moving around too much. You have a certificate of authenticity. Congratulations on the purchase of your new steel will knife. And it has a little brief description here. Very nice to have. And of course, one thing that is very interesting about this knife included is a spare pocket clip. This is identical to the one featured on the knife, and you don't get any extra screws. You just get an entirely, well, spare pocket clip. And this is interesting. I suppose if you have an extra screw, you can attach the second clip to the other side of the knife and have an ambidextrous knife for all of those tactical operations, such as going to the convenience store to buy Doritos. Now, the knife in question. Well, this is a very substantial knife, as you can very clearly see. And shockingly, this is the Mini. This is supposed to be a small version of the Plague Doctor. Now, I have watched quite a few reviews on this knife, and the major difference between the two is not that big. It's about an inch, I believe, of a difference between the Mini and the normal Plague Doctor. And even so, this comes in at a fairly substantial size. I will get my trusty ruler here, and I shall show you what I mean. Your handle length is coming in just at around 5 inches, which is already quite telling. The blade comes in at about 3.5 inches, bringing the knife to a whopping total of almost 8.5. So this is, again, an incredibly substantial knife, and this is illegal in the UK for many reasons. And its profile is certainly not one that I would consider friendly. I'll do a quick comparison before I start getting into the real specifications. Here it is with a knife that I had taken out of my little collection case. It's been a long time since I've brought this knife out. This is the Case Doctor's knife, which is a very pretty little knife, by the way. And heavy emphasis on little. In comparison, these knives, well, there's nothing similar about these knives really at all. Thickness, this knife completely dwarfs the Doctor. Lengthwise, this knife completely eclipses the Doctor, and I thought it would be fun, by the way, as these are both technically Doctor knives, the traditional pattern of a doctor's knife, and then the plague doctor. But as you can imagine, this is what I'm more used to collecting, and naturally, this knife here, the plague doctor, was quite the game changer for me. It's not what I'm used to say the least. Now, let's go over the knife. To begin, well, what was this knife designed for? This knife was designed to be part of a tactical lineup, as, again, it states simply there on the box, of knives that are intended for operators and people who will be going into possibly dangerous scenarios, and they really marketed this knife off to be a urban tactical carry, which is heavily biased towards the self-defense section of knife use. Now, as you probably know, my returning viewers, you will know I have said this before, partially so YouTube doesn't nuke me, and also just simply because I personally believe it. I don't condone violence to anyone for any reason at any time, so yes, you don't need to remove my video, YouTube. I'm not promoting violence. But even so, this knife is, well, naturally, as you can imagine just by looking at it, very good in that department. The grip is outstanding. You get a full 4-finger grip and then some. Again, my hands aren't particularly large, but they aren't small either. Very nice, comfortable grip on that textured G10, which makes for a very nice, secure handle overall. You can reverse grip this knife, again with relative ease. The back spacers have jimping, which means that you can easily get a very nice grip here too. Again, very comfortable. I could definitely see this being the ideal position for many, although for whatever reason you're carrying a knife, I always am biased towards the saber grip, which is very much helped along with this little thumb ramp and bit of jimping on the top of the blade, as well as on the bottom, of course, which makes for an incredibly secure grip. So ergonomics and comfort, this knife would be a 10 out of 10 for me. The pocket clip is small, unintrusive, and really you don't even feel it. Just the ever so slight realization that, oh, there's something else extra here that isn't on this side. It's not a problem whatsoever. But of course, with any good pocket clip, you can remove it if you, for whatever reason, do not wish to have a pocket clip on your knife. You can just take the little screws here. These are Torx screws, I believe. And you can just remove it and have a lump of a knife sitting in the bottom of your pocket, because that sounds comfortable. And of course, if you are a lefty, you can simply replace where you want your clip to go and put it on this side. So again, you have options. It's tip-up carry, which I know most people like. So you can see it would fit very deeply in the pocket. Again, not the deepest carry pocket clip ever, but enough that it wouldn't be immediately recognized as a knife, but nonetheless. The flipper is very smooth. The action is beautiful. This is working on bronze washers, which is quite the uncommon choice for most flipper knives. And naturally, it means that you're going to get some very good performance with a little bit of extra oil every now and then. Again, lubrication for knives, whether slip joint lockback or, well, assisted opening, whatever, it's always a very smart choice, as it will keep your blades running smoothly, quickly, and effectively. The action on this, since it's not a slip joint, I can't rate the walk and talk. The action is very nice. I'd rate it about probably an 8 out of 10. I definitely have smoother knives, but at the same time, compared to the usual two-hand opening process that most slip joints and traditionals can have, and they tend to sometimes be a little harder to open, a little bit grittier, this is buttery smooth compared to them. And the blade is quite heavy, as it is a large blade, so sometimes if you don't put enough effort in, it'll only go about 3/4 of the way, and then you'll have to push it the rest of the way. The blade steel is D2, which is a time-tested tool steel, kind of bridging the gap between stainless and carbon. it's far from the worst steel ever, and it's certainly not the best, as any super steel fan will tell you very passionately. And of course, this is a good mid-performance steel for what the knife is, and I can safely assure you that this is a very, very sharp knife out of the box. Little shaving test. You can see that, well, actually you won't be able to see if the camera doesn't decide to focus. You can see that there is quite the edge on this, as it is easily shaving sharp. Pretty much right out of the box. I've cut some cardboard with it, just to give it a test. I don't use my knives as much as I'd like to. I don't have many reasons to use them, so when I get that chance, I will take it. But again, you have a very nice sharp edge here. You have a little, I believe this would be a choil, if you will, and it means that makes sharpening this a lot easier. There's a fair bit of belly on this blade, which is quite nice. You have some nice rivets here. Well, a rivet, I should say. Looks like you can remove it if need be. Oh, one thing I always check on traditional knives, how straight is the blade? I'd say that's about dead on center. That's perfect. In the closed position, maybe a little bit off, a little bit to the one side, but again, that's very close to perfect. I'm not going to be picky. One thing I do like is the almost copper head. In the sense of traditional knives, copper heads have a bolster that's curved around so that the back of the blade won't catch on your pocket. And this knife, while it's far from a copper head in every single way, you can see it has that. So it's very smooth, very rounded. Yeah. Again, the blade markings, you've got Plague Doctor, you have the designer, and the model number. Again, F16M D2 for the steel. And it says Steel Will with their logo on this side. And I think that the almost grayish, silvery white marking is a nice contrast to the murdered out black blade. The grind on this is, I'd say, probably a hollow grind. I'm no expert in blade grinds nor steels. That's not the part of the knife community I'm particularly active in. I'm more into traditional materials and such, but I can probably tell you that that is close to a hollow grind, or at least that's what I perceive as a hollow grind. If you want, you can correct me. You have a nice swedge running the length of most of the blade on either side. The liner is jimped, which means it's very easy to disengage. The closing action is fair. Again, not the smoothest in the world, but far from the worst. Nice detent overall. The blade shape on this, I'd probably call a modified drop point, and that's taking heavy royalties, but you can certainly see why it was called the Plague Doctor, as, again, I brought this in for a bit of a example. You can see that the blade is designed, well, it's designed primarily to be ergonomic and comfortable, but you can see the similarities in the shape of the beaked mask as you can with this particular blade shape. And a little bit of history, these masks didn't actually help protect you from the Black Death, but rather doctors, most of them weren't even well trained, but what they do is they'd stuff spices and herbs in the center of the mask. You could still breathe perfectly fine, but what they would do is these spices would help you to, to put it bluntly, you wouldn't have to smell the stench of death to the same degree that you would have had you not had the herbs in the beak. And at the time, again, people were dropping dead like flies, and yeah, you can imagine that the life of a doctor at the time would have been quite quite the horrific one. It would have been horrific for everyone at the time. But yeah, this mask didn't really, it was no wonder aid in helping keep you safe from the Black Death, but rather it did give the advantage of, well, it was less of an assault on your nose all the time. But there was also a myth that the plague spread through scent, so they thought that that would protect them in the time, but again, I don't really believe that that is actually the case. So, back to the knife. I definitely like this blade for its ergonomics. It's extremely comfortable no matter which way you hold it. Unless, of course, you want to be an idiot and hold it like this. And even then, actually, it's fairly comfortable. The action is certainly good. I'd say opening would be an 8. Closing would be about a 6 or a 7 in smoothness. Materials used are quality. This knife feels sturdy, well built. Doesn't feel like it's going to fall apart on you. And again, country of origin, I don't believe I mentioned it, is China. I know that Steel Will does make some premium models of, say, their Intrigue knife, which is made with M390 and carbon fiber, and that one's from Italy. And that knife really intrigues me. Anyone? No? Okay, I'll stop. And yes, they do have some premium models from Italy, but the majority of their knives are made in China. Again, whether you choose to see that as a bad thing or not, that's entirely up to you. But I think, and I'm being very unbiased here, the quality is very good for the price. This knife was discontinued. That was part of the reason I wanted to grab one while there were still a couple left. And I found this at Warriors and Wonders for about 97 Canadian dollars, which isn't cheap, but it's certainly not terribly expensive in today's day and age of $500 custom factory order knives. So if you're new in the knife community, you may want to stay away from something like this. It's a bit pricey, and it's very much a specific type of knife for a specific thing. And I'd recommend sticking to more of the, I hate to say it, but Spyderco Delica, Benchmade Bug Out, the usuals that are time-tested and proven to be good overall designs. And while I, of course, would give you a very long list of traditional knives instead, because that's just what I prefer, I understand the average individual is more of a modern knife fan, and they want the superior steel, the better action, the one-hand opening, the pocket clip, etc. So, yes, would I recommend this knife to a new person in the knife community? No. I think that this would be something more for either you know what you're looking for, you know exactly what you want, and this knife fits the specific purpose, and you've been eyeing it for a while, you think, oh, I really want that knife. Yes, I would absolutely recommend it. If you're looking for something, again, like a tactical knife that could still be helpful for EDC, I know they did say in the description on Steel Will's website that the normal Plague Doctor is, well, they don't really recommend it as a carry knife, but the mini version, again, heavy emphasis on mini, is, while it still has the original goal that the base design has, they wanted this one to be a bit more everyday carry friendly. And this is still a big, chunky boy of a knife. And by all means, it's not going to be the kind of knife you want to take out at your granny's retirement home in the lunchroom. It's not something that would probably go over well. But if you live in an urban environment and, you know, your laws allow it, and you want a big, beefy, intimidating knife that looks like it'll be carried by a biker, then yeah, by all means. It works for everyday carry. It opens boxes like a charm, could cut some thread, peel an apple, cut your sandwich at lunch. Yeah, it does all of the good everyday carry things that you'd want a knife to do, while still having the elements of personal defense, which I could see a lot of people still liking. And while I personally am not buying it for that, I mean, to be perfectly honest, I bought it for the name. I really like Plague Doctors for some reason. You probably can tell that if you've ever looked at my channel profile. And the name just caught my eye. The design caught my eye. It was weird. It was surreal. It was discontinued. I thought I have to have it. And so if you're like me and you just want it for the name, yeah, I'd try telling you you can skip it. But no, you're going to do what I did. You're going to buy it anyway. It's only a matter of time. If you're set on buying it and you want it, you're going to get it. If you're on the fence, you don't know if it's right for you, maybe consider some of the other knives from Steel Will, if you're looking for a Steel Will in particular, that is. But there are other knives that do the tactical job probably better, and definitely do the everyday carry job better. So my overall rating, I'd give this knife a solid 7 out of 10. Now, why is that? Well, the materials are good. The materials alone are fairly nice. They feel like they're of good quality. The construction is very well done. It's certainly not a, how should I put it, a breakable feeling knife. It certainly isn't a safe queen. It's definitely not the kind of knife that gives that off. Materials, workmanship, very good. Steel is middle of the road, but for me and for the average person who's not a very petty steel aficionado, it should be perfectly fine for them. Action is nice and smooth. Just remember to oil it every now and then. Pocket clip is nice. Blade shape is nice. I think the blade finish looks great, although you can get it in the plain stainless steel satin finish. And you can also get it with green G10 if you so desire, again with the black or stainless blade. And yeah, ergonomics are excellent. Feel in the hand is excellent. Weight in the pocket is noticeable until you use the clip, at which point it kind of just disappears. Workmanship, materials, steel, everything is very good. Yeah, I think that the price point is nice, and the company seems fairly good. This is my first Steel Will, and maybe not my last. It's certainly not the kind of company that makes, again, the kind of knives I frequently buy. But who knows, in the future I might get one of those intriguing... Okay, I'll stop. But yes, very nice knife. I think it's good, but for me personally, I'm not going to carry this. Too big, too bulky, too scary looking. And while there are some people that want to carry a knife for that, you know, it would do the job. Yeah, it would do the job very, very well. But for me personally, this is going in the collection, and yeah, I really like this knife, just not one that I think I would ever carry. So thank you very much for watching. This has been the Steel Will Plague Doctor Mini, and this is the Knife Raven, as always, signing off. Goodbye.